Hi, welcome to the Edgar Rice Burroughs podcast, where we celebrate the fiction of the greatest adventure writer of the 20th century. I'm Tim DeForest. I am the writer of several books on pulp fiction, amongst other aspects of early 20th century pop culture, the magazines that Burroughs published his stuff in. And keep a blog on such matters. I also now have a blog where I review every book I read and a booktube channel, so I'm all over mass media. I'm intensely famous. My booktube channel gets tens of hits with every video. And joining me tonight, Jess.
My name is Jess Terrell, and you might know me from the Facebook discussion group for the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs, where a cast of gee whiz 35,000 and yours truly talk ERB pert near 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's for the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Scott Stewart, freelance editor and writer, and looking forward to the time ahead with these guys.
Okay, and tonight we are going to be talking about the last book in the Moon Maid trilogy, Red Hawk. Our last two episodes covered the first two books, Moon Maid and Moon Men. Before that, yes, I hear the apes of Kershak, reminding us we have several special features tonight. The first one is our trivia contest. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you a trivia question, our listeners. If you know the answer, email it to us at eggersmailbag@gmail.com. That'll be in the show notes. If you give the answer anywhere else on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, it won't count. You have to email it to us. And then I will pick a winner of all the correct answers, and that person will get a copy of the new authorized edition of A Princess of Mars with the beautiful, breathtaking Joe Jusko artwork. Joe might very well be slowly becoming the artist for Edgar Rice Burroughs, even considering all the magnificent artists they've had in the past. So the once again, the prize is a copy of the authorized edition of Princess of Mars. And the question is, what Edgar Rice Burroughs novel contains a secret love message to his future wife, Florence? So once again, email that to us at eggersmailbag@gmail.com to get it to for a chance to win a copy of A Princess of Mars. What Edgar Rice Burroughs novel contains a secret love message to his future wife, Florence? And then also our special feature is, Jess, you had somebody ask you this week why you enjoy Pulp Fiction, and you put together an answer, correct?
Correct, it's more than Pulp Fiction. I would say even fictional stories at large.
Mhm.
The reason is I started out quite young, as we all do, and in those early days, I was looking for guidance. I was looking for a father figure, and and I turned to the heroes of Pulp Fiction to provide that level of guidance. Now I don't need a father figure anymore, but I've recognized why do people do what they do? Why did I do this? So I recognize that I found that guidance comforting and insightful and informative. Informative is a better word. So I proceeded with that. So here's some examples of the things I've learned from my very many heroes. And this is around 6 years old or so. Superman gave me hope, truth, justice, and the American way. And is more than a cliche. Superman is dedicated to these values. The Justice League, also from DC Comics, taught me teamwork. And in grade school, in grad school, he said, I wrote a paper on teamwork based on what I had learned over these years from these superheroes. Batman taught me to be thorough. Sherlock Holmes taught me to consider all possibilities. Spock taught me to be logical and that there are always alternatives. Jim Kirk taught me how to handle the no-win situation. You take control of it. Tarzan taught me to develop the best in body, mind, and spirit, and I still got some work to do on that one. To be aware of your surroundings. John Carter, of course, taught us all to never give up so long as I still live. And one of the most popular story forms is good versus evil. and I'm always rooting for the good guys, needless to say. Um, so that's it. That's my motivation
Yeah.
for being interested in these stories. They've served me well throughout my life. They've been a guiding force. Go ahead.
Well, I largely agree with that. I will add, and I think you'd agree, that just a well-told story is a pleasure in its own right. You know,
Most definitely.
we follow along something like Burroughs, who can put together a plot so well and have characters we care about and all of that. But on top of that is everything you said. The pulps teach us that there is a difference between good and evil. And it teaches us that those who are strong have a moral obligation to protect those who are weak. I think the pulp heroes and the other heroes, Spock and Kirk, everybody you named and more, teach us to recognize real heroism when we see it in real life. And maybe aspire to that ourselves. Yeah, I think what you said was perfect.
Well, I think you reset it even better than I did.
No.
So I appreciate your interpretation. Well done.
Yeah. Scott, anything to add to that?
You guys summed up pretty well. It's just Pulp Fiction came out, what you had mentioned there, Jess, about the comics, DC comics and then Marvel comics, which I started reading somewhere when I was about 5, just old enough to do more and look at the pictures and stuff. And Pulp Fiction grew right out of that. I ended up reading Tarzan books and there Doc Savage, Sherlock Holmes. You mentioned a lot of them. By third grade, I was reading Edgar Allan Poe. I read a adaptation in third issue of Creepy magazine,
Mhm.
which my parents didn't know I had at that age, that had Telltale Heart in it. And so I went to the library and I got a book on Edgar Allan Poe and read the actual one because I'm like, whoa, this was a giant leap forward to me. And just the enjoyment of good story. Some friends, kind of like, it made me want to do some more of the Asman or Arthur C. Clarke, which I love. And, some of these other books, which when I got older, when we were reading more serious. But I love, as you mentioned, a just a nice, well-rounded story.
Mm.
Sometimes there are twists and turns in it, which adds to it. But there's a good guy and a bad guy. It's pretty much black and white. It's a reason. I think it's a big reason why when the first Star Wars came out and Indiana Jones came out, it took the flavor from the pulps that were popular in the 30s, 40s, 50s and brought them into a medium that the modern audience was ready for, and I think absolutely hungry for.
Mhm.
Jaws would fall into that category too. It's escapism. It's the stories of the fantastic, and you're not sitting there worrying about riots or who's running for office or a war in another country. It's just what it's supposed to be, entertainment.
Mhm.
Very well said. Let me jump in here if I may. The I failed. Star Wars is something that was on my list, and I failed to mention. I knew I left something off. Star Wars, the very first movie in its original form was well later named New Hope, and it gave those people hope that they could survive all this and maybe beat the bad guys.
Mhm.
So that's just another. And also, I failed also to mention in my little monologue there that while I was talking about pulp heroes, and there was some pulp heroes, there's also some comic book heroes in there. The comic book heroes, for the most part, sprang from the pulps. They kind of evolved over time.
Yeah.
Um, that's the point I should have made because it was more than just pulp heroes or comic book heroes there in my comments
Yeah.
too. But yeah, you all
It's
get the idea, and I appreciate
yeah.
you letting me share that with you.
Well, it's pretty direct. Yeah, when Bill Finger wrote the first issue of Batman, he lifted the plot of a Shadow magazine from a few years ago, a few
Right.
years earlier, directly. So obviously there's an influence there, and yeah, they all mix into that bag of heroes. That I think there's one part of our mind that always thinks of them as real, even though we know they're fictional, and
Oh yeah.
kind of enjoys that idea.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, because if do we want to live in a world where Sherlock Holmes and Tarzan don't really exist?
Not
So
really.
not really.
Given a choice. Given a choice.
Yeah. So, okay, tonight we are covering Red Hawk. We're concluding the Moon Maid trilogy. This was written in 1925 The entire trilogy, I think, was a response to Burroughs' extreme dislike of communism. When the year this came out, Lenin had died and Stalin had taken over in the Soviet Union, which means things went from bad to worse. There was trouble in the United States with things that Burroughs disliked, like prohibition. There was the International Workers of the World, which was a union, but was also very violent and was very socialist leaning. And so he was worried about all this. So he wrote this to warn, like, communism is bad, and this is what would happen if they take it, if they ever take charge. Um, Trilogy really should be required reading in colleges nowadays, shouldn't it? So, so but when we get to Red Hawk, um, we've jumped ahead about 300 years from the previous one to the year 2430, where the world has changed drastically. And so to start our summary, and as usual, to help make sure we all read the book recently, but to make sure I don't leave anything out, as usual, I'm referring to the excellent chapter by chapter summaries on the erblist.com. And I appreciate the excellent scholarship done there. I don't think our podcast episodes would be half as good without it, or at least we'd have to do hours more preparation before we came and talked about it. So, chap.
Wayne Allen wrote the one on the Moon trilogy, and
He did, yes.
did a
Uh,
fantastic job on that, and that
mhm.
poem adaptation he did.
Yep. And some of the backstory of what was going on in politics and society at that time, I got from his summary as well. So just excellent scholarship there, and I appreciate that being available to everyone. That's erblist.com. If you're a Burroughs fan, you should know that site and be referring to it. So chapter one, the year is 2430. We're up to Julian the 20th in line of the Julian dynasty, although he goes by the name Red Hawk. The Americans have been fighting the Kalkars, the Communist Society from the Moon, for 300 years now. It was started back in Julian the Ninth in the previous book. And slowly, the Americans have been winning. And they've pushed the Kalkars back to the western edge of the continent, basically California, or I guess at least the western side of the Rockies. Um, and it's for 100 years they've guarded a pass that leads down through the mountains and kept the Kalkars contained. Um, and Red Hawk has decided that enough is enough and they need to finish off the Kalkars. And after the next rainy season, they're going to move in. They're going to move everything in. They're going to bring their women, their children, their animals, everything. This is an all or nothing effort. It's going to be a final battle. They also bring what they call the flag of Argonne, which is the flag of the United States, although they have lost track of its original meaning and treat it now as a religious symbol. Um, and that's chapter one, setting up the world as we have it now, setting up that there's about to be a major battle, and showing us that the American society has kind of gone backwards technologically. I should stress that they fight on horseback with swords and bows and spears. There's no technology left. Don't think there's any literacy left, is there? So um, they've gone down to barbarian level stuff. And that is chapter one. And when reading this, did you guys find it impossible not to think of the original Star Trek episode the Omega Glory?
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I just said absolutely.
Mhm.
I definitely agree. I definitely thought about that. I really, for years now, linked to that episode and its flag to this story about Red Hawk and of course the prior chunks of of this Julian adventure. The it's I think it's ironic that society would if it's sad that they drop in their abilities and knowledge, but I
Mhm.
think it's ironic that they choose or are forced to use maybe the only practical thing to do a lifestyle based on the American Indian. There's
Hmm.
I've said for years, and this goes back to watching a lot of westerns as a kid growing up, like everybody was in the late 50s and early 60s. Said there's much we could have learned from the American Indian.
Hmm.
Instead of destroying their culture and running them all the way to Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Um, and here it is. Burroughs is using that as their, I'll say, savior, for want of a better word. It's the
Hmm.
technique that's working for them. They've learned how to adapt,
Hmm.
and they're still flourishing. And they pushed their opponent even farther than they are pushed.
Yeah, and I think we know from Burroughs' Westerns that he had a great respect
Oh yeah,
for the American Indian.
good point.
He didn't blindly see them as a perfect society. What was Indian Chief? We covered it a few years ago. The one about the kid who's captured as a child and raised in as Apache.
Oh,
What
War
was
Chief.
War Chief? I'm sorry, I couldn't. But we know, he you read that and he's like he obviously loves the Apache society in a lot of ways, but
Mhm.
he's not afraid to be critical of the violent aspects of their society.
Mhm.
So that's why I respect Burroughs' opinion in this. He didn't have just a blind, oh, this Indians had these perfect, they were one with nature, they were perfect. He knew they were flawed, but he admired them for what they got right, their courage, their ability to live off the land, all of that.
Look,
Um, and I think that shows in this novel where the remnants of American society have basically adapted the ways of the Native Americans in order to survive and prosper as much as they can.
mhm. Scott.
Just looking up something here on Wikipedia and to see on an analysis if they mentioned this book, but I haven't run across it. Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, also wrote the episode of the Omega Glory. And I would not be surprised at all if he wasn't a Burroughs reader to some extent and may very well have read Red Hawk
Hmm.
and gotten that idea. I just found an interesting note too that the Omega Glory was one of the three episodes written, um, planned to be the pilot for Star Trek, as Where No Man Has Gone Before, which became the pilot. But this was in consideration to be a pilot. It wasn't aired till the film till the second season, though.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know
So,
that either.
mhm.
But
Uh,
I think you're very correct though in that in that this is a story. I'm sure that Roddenberry has treasured for years, and
mhm.
confident he got the idea for the flag from Burroughs.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I kept expecting Captain Kirk to show up in the last chapter and give an over-the-top speech about what the flag actually means. Um, and that was mostly a fun episode.
Yeah,
But it had its flaws, but the concept was cool. The guy who played the insane starship captain was really
Oh,
good, and his knife fight with Kirk was one of the best choreographed fights they had in the series.
yeah, I know what
So
you're talking about.
yeah, um,
well, the
yeah,
Red Hawk didn't have the Declaration of
of Independence.
Independence yet,
Yeah,
though.
so he didn't have anything that Kirk could read, and
Yeah,
um, so Kirk would have thought of something. He would have destroyed the Calcars with illogic or whatever. So so okay, so that's chapter one. Chapter two is called Exodus, and the Red Hawk gathers all the clans. There's like 50 clans, and I don't know if they give an exact number, but there's thousands of people amongst the Red Hawks clans. Um, and the flag, once again, they establish the flag is revered as a god. And while they're moving west, there's kind of an interesting interlude with Red Hawk's brother Raincloud, who's questioning the idea that the Earth is flat. Um, so it's like this doesn't really affect the story at all, but I think Burroughs might be saying maybe if they can get rid of the cow cars and have peace, maybe they're ready for some sort of renaissance and to start regaining knowledge again. It's the only reason I can think that scene is there. It's a neat little scene, but Red Hawk tells him he's absurd. Of course, the Earth is flat. How can you think otherwise? But it hints that they've got people there who are thinking about things, not just surviving and fighting, but thinking about how the world goes together. And so maybe there's a good chance for the American nation to rise again and start rediscovering technology and culture and all of that. So, but amongst the chapter, they spend like 5 nights um, crossing over into, um, or actually 10 nights and 10 marches and 12 days, it says in the summary. And he comes up with a battle plan to draw out the Calcor hordes and to have another clan attack them from the rear, and Red Hawk will flank them. So he's got all the clans in place at the end of the chapter, and he's ready to launch his attack. So this chapter moves the story along and gets us ready for an epic action scene. Um, but I just think the most interesting thing about this chapter, other than it progressing the story, is Raincloud's little, thoughtful, what if the Earth isn't flat? Well, what can't we think about this and study it and all of that? So, comments on you guys from this chapter?
Regarding the flat Earth incident there, this is something that I wrote extensively about early on. Of course, I cannot find that note anymore, which is probably just as well because it was
Mhm.
long-winded as usual. But I saw it as a quick summary of showing how they have been affected by 300 some odd years of war and
Mhm.
how their society has gone downhill. Nothing
Mhm.
against their approach with the American Indian. I don't mean that, but I mean 300 years prior to this, they had people flying around in space. They sent
Mhm.
a ship to the moon. They were trying to get a ship over there to Barsoom. And all that stuff's been forgotten. Now they're trying to figure out the earth is flat. So they've and so in society has stepped backwards somewhat, is my point here. And this gives a quick way of giving us an idea and showing, illustrating society has stepped backwards. It's been
Mhm.
a terrible, it's the cost of war. I
Yeah.
mean, you look at some of the damage that occurred in World War II, and certainly that was a war that needed to be fought, because considering the enemy there, I'm not questioning that, but it takes a toll. Wars
Mhm.
like that take a toll on society. You lose people that they get killed that could have otherwise been very helpful in the business or other arenas. Instead, they're out there fighting wars and that sort of thing. So war has a cost, is my point. I think this is showing that these people have had 300 years of it. That's
Okay.
all. That's enough for me. That's all I have
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, comments from you, Scott?
Yeah, and that's good. I was going to make a comment after first chapter, but it actually goes in chapter two, and other parts of the book coming up. Is I wish uh, before reading the book, I'd read the summary by
Hmm.
Dwayne Allen, because after I read it, now I need to go back to reread sections of it because he postulates that maybe the pass that they're defending is the Cajon Pass,
Hmm.
which is like between LA and Barstow and LA and Vegas out there. So in chapter two, they come up and they go to Bear Lake. So I'm in my head starting to map this out. Could this be what we know nowadays as Big Bear Lake? And later on, I'll go to the book. I don't want to jump ahead too much. So now I was trying to map out their journey and the route of adventures on where they were, whether in San Fernando Valley, out to the ocean, back through the LA basin or whatever. And I'll save those comments for later. But having read that, now I want to read parts of it to see if Edgar Allan Poe,
Yeah.
Edgar Rice Burroughs was taking the familiarity of the layout of LA and Southern California to
Mhm.
base the adventures in this book on.
Well, he would have known that part of the country, so it's
He
very
would have
possible.
known it. Yeah.
It is too bad this book. Who was the publisher back in the 50s and 60s who put a map on the back of their paperbacks? 'Cause there was one for Tarzan and the Lost Empire.
Uh,
Um,
um,
it would have been
uh,
fun. It might have been Dell.
I think it's
Uh,
Dell.
I think it's Dell.
They were called mapbacks, and there was only two
Yeah.
of them. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. It would have been, it was too bad this one didn't get a map back. And you could have had Red Hawk's clan's route and then his personal adventures route on a map, oh, on the back, and it would have told us all of this.
We'll have
So
to create one.
we should create one or find out if anyone's ever created one.
Uh,
So,
I can see a family in the car in the 1950s, and
mhm.
the child says, "I want." The child's in the back seat reading his Burroughs book, and he says, "Can I borrow the map? I want to see where we are." And of course his parents hand over the map, and he gets the thing all unfolded, and he's figuring out where he is in the book, and they're wanting to know why did you all of a sudden get interested in geography? That's another benefit of Burroughs is education
Mhm.
on maps, how to read a
Yeah.
map.
I have always loved maps and books. Lord of the Rings from when
Oh,
I
I do
was in
too.
my young teens.
Hmm.
That's just that's like halfway towards selling me on a book. Is oh, look, it's got a map in it.
There
He always
is
did a good job on that with Conan too.
Yes, yeah, the Conan books.
Bologna.
Yeah, that had the map, and I love that. Um,
excuse me, there has been uh, probably more than one an entire book of maps of
mhm.
different fictional areas like you're talking about.
Yeah, well,
Like anything.
there's an
I've got that
atlas.
someplace. Go ahead.
I've got one called the Atlas of Fantasy.
Yes,
That's
that's it.
probably it's probably from 30 years ago at least.
Yep. Yep.
So I doubt it's in print now, and there might be other books with the same idea out there. But the
Well,
Atlas of Fantasy is wonderful.
if you can find it, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I have one, but I had to pay.
Mhm.
I had to pay for it, meaning I had to pay for it.
Yeah. So, okay, chapter three. This is going to be just an epic battle scene. And I'm actually going to insert right here. We're recording this on January 25th. 3 days ago was the 120th birthday of Robert E. Howard. And I know that Howard had Burroughs books in his personal library. You know, and Burroughs had to be an influence because I'm reading this, and if I didn't know it was a Burroughs book, and you told me, "Oh, Robert E. Howard wrote this battle scene," I would have believed it, because it has that just epic, visceral, violent feel that Howard's battle scenes do. So I think we can credit Burroughs with being one of the many influences on Robert E. Howard and the superb fiction, adventure fiction he wrote. Um, but there's a battle. Red Hawk defeats Calcor Chief. The battle goes on for hours. Um, we get at one point a messenger from Ortis, the head of the Calcars, shows up and says, can we call this off and have peace talks?" And Red Hawk, no, this is where this chapter really emphasizes that from the point of view of Red Hawk and his people, the Calcars are enemies and will always be enemies and always have been enemies and just have to be killed. He just dismisses the idea of a truce right away, and the battle continues. Um, and the night comes. The Julians have encircled the Calcars, and they're resting for the evening. And then the Calcars make a rush en masse to try and break through, and Red Hawk is caught in the crush of that horde, and he's captured. And that's the end of chapter three. Um, and so once again, this is an epic battle scene. This is an awesome battle scene. Burroughs is always good at writing action. Um, and this is just one of his top examples of that, I think. And I also think it's important that he emphasizes that at this point, Red Hawk's attitude is that the only good Calcar is a dead Calcar, and he won't even consider any sort of peace with them until they're defeated. Comments from you guys?
My first thought on this kind of thing is that, in dealing with an opponent, thankfully I don't have to do this very often, is that we're stronger together than we are separated. We're stronger
Hmm.
together. We work together and to get the job done. In this example, though, I don't blame Red Hawk for being wore out. He can't
Hmm.
trust these people. They've been dealing with this for 300 years. Now he's got them on the ropes.
Hmm.
So while it may not be my first choice personally, I understand his position. And it is his world. I'm not going to tell him how to run his world. And that is to go ahead and deal with the cow cars. Go ahead.
Hmm. Yes.
I agree with you about this too. It's going to be part of his character arc,
Hmm.
going from the only good one's a dead one,
Hmm.
and we'll come up and see how that develops. So to me, this is a key point, an integral
Hmm.
turn in the story here,
Hmm.
Yeah.
especially with him getting captured.
Yeah. Basically, it goes from the only good one is a dead one to wow, this one's really pretty. So,
Well, there is that.
there's a little more no, there's a little more depth to it than that. But there we go. Yeah, chapter four, the capital. He is The news, he's brought in as a prisoner. Julian is brought before the 16th Ortis, the current leader of the Calcars. Um, and that name is a variation of the original bad guy, the Earthman who led the Moonmen down from the moon and invaded Earth.
Mhm.
Um, so Julian, Red Hawk is a Julian. He's a descendant of the original Julian, and the Ortis is a descendant of the original Julian's archenemy, and the guy who started all this trouble. Um, your Red Hawks offered a peace alliance again, and he refuses this. He's still, no, you guys are Calcars. We can't trust you. We want you dead. Nothing else is acceptable. Um, he does this at least twice, and Red Hawk refuses both times. So he's sentenced to be sent to the butcher, the executioner, in the morning. And he's imprisoned at the top of a skyscraper. They're in the ruins of what was a modern city hundreds of years ago. And the guy he's imprisoned with is the true Ortis, the guy who should be in charge of the Calcars. Um, and this guy just starts talking about how he regrets this feud that's been going on for centuries, and he wants peace. He wants to unite all Americans, and he, um, he wants to get rid of the actual Calcars, the people who were like the full-blooded Moon people, and he wants the Americans just to team up again and live in peace. Um, and this just starts making Julian have second thoughts. Maybe not all of these guys are bad, and maybe like we should consider some of their ideas. So this is the beginning of the movement in his character arc here. And he's kind of put in a situation where he's forced to work with this guy to escape, but still it starts to change his own attitudes. Comments from you guys?
How did this fella, I escaped, this escaped me. How did
Hmm.
this fella prove that he was the original leader of the Calcars? Did he show his driver's license? I'm being funny when I say that.
Yeah, actually, I think he just said so, and Red Hawk just believed him.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I thought happened. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and of course, why would you make that up? Maybe there's some,
You want to get out of
in
jail?
that
Here's a guy who can help you.
situation. Well, yeah, that's true. It does turn out to be true, but yeah, Red Hawk just kind of believes him. Um, because yeah, I didn't have like, I have the tattoo of the Orcus or anything like that. He just said,
Right,
I
right.
was the true Orcus.
Well, I'm glad
Maybe.
I'm glad it worked out. I was just
Yeah,
curious
unless
how they
there's
came.
something I'm forgetting as well. Maybe this is part of Red Hawk's character growth. He instinctively knows this guy is honest and is one of the reasons he's forced to confront with his own attitudes toward Calcars.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I can take that.
Scott, any comments
I
from
might
you?
be I might be overthinking this and
Mhm.
going off a cliff here. If I am, can you can slap me, but maybe it'll spark something you guys will pick up on or find. But this was coming out of World War One,
Mhm.
and his dislike for the communist movement in Russia and stuff like that. And so I'm looking through here, and my brain gets a little weird sometimes, but I'm going like Ortez, because we know he's named stuff we've discovered in other books that are similar to certain movements. And so I'm like Ortez, or Otto Bismarck, Cal, uh, Kaiser, yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
communism. I don't know. So I'm just, it's a really weak link, but
Oh.
uh, I'm going to have to go through and reread and see if there aren't some of the names or things like Nippon, which is coming up,
Mhm.
is part of a name that's been used portraying Japan for a long time or similar to it.
Right.
So, and just the wheels sometimes start turning on here and start wondering because he had some big backlash about how he handled the German armies or how he talked of them in the Tarzan book.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
So maybe he was still doing it here, or maybe I'm just a flake. I don't know.
First of all, I think you're right. Second of all, this story had laid around for a number of years before it actually got published, and had been through several revisions. So
Mhm.
little details like where that name originated from might have gotten overlooked when you're
Mhm.
just trying to rewrite the whole story. I can see that.
Yeah. And he was pretty close to where when his stuff was published in Germany again, and his sales plummeted because of the way he presented Germans in
Right.
the
Yeah.
books written of the war. I've always noticed that he suddenly had German heroes, Erich von Harben,
Oh
and
yeah.
he was obviously trying to say, no, see, I think I know some Germans are okay. Here we go. See,
Mhm.
trying to regain his
Am I
audience
remembering
again.
right that Moon Trilogy or Red Hawk never was translated and published in Russia
I doubt it would have been. Why? I don't think they would. The Soviet
because of
government would have.
political
Yeah,
similarities?
Don't push your luck. Yeah.
yeah. They weren't gonna publish anything that was anti-communist propaganda.
Sure.
They were a dictatorship, so it was either going to say they were wonderful or they weren't going to publish it.
Yeah.
So, um,
Now, if we're done with that, this is a chapter called Capital, right?
this is
Yeah.
chapter 4, the capital. Yes.
And did they actually go to the cap? Because I saw they were going to the Capitol. I immediately think Washington D.C. So did they leave the
No,
West Coast to make their
no.
own
This
way?
this is just what the Calcor is called, the capital. It's the ruins of a city that's never identified. It might be L.A.
Okay.
or Oakland or who knows,
Okay. Well, that settles
Sacramento.
that because I didn't
Yeah.
think they made an entire trek across the country.
Yeah, no, it was just what the Calcor is called their capital city,
Well, then
and
I guess I can scratch my comments on Logan's Run that I was going to add to this. Never mind.
um, the first oh, I just thought of something brilliant to say and it left me, so never mind.
You'll be
So
back.
it'll be back someday. So chapter 5 is called The Sea. Julian and Ortis make a truce. They Julian says, "Okay, you can escape with me," because and together, it's another great action scene. They overpower guards. They scale down a wall. They take the guards' cloaks. They get horses. Red Hawk finds his own horse, Red Lightning, who's pretty much his Silver. The lone, it's as Silver was to the Lone Ranger, Red Lightning is to Red Hawk.
Hmm.
Um, what was the name of the Phantom's horse?
Oh Lord.
His dog was Devil, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're
Um,
right. The horse has a name, but I couldn't tell you.
yeah, horse has a cool name too. So, well,
Spirit or something.
I don't think so. Um, oh well. Anybody watching this, leave the name of the Phantom's horse in the comments. But anyway, it's that sort of thing. It's the horse that is very loyal to him. So he gets his own horse back. They're pursued. They're almost trapped. They go their separate ways so that they both don't get caught. Um, he eventually ends up on a cliff overlooking the ocean, and he and his horse get down to the sea where they drink salt water and become very ill. This is the first time that Red Hawk has run into salt water. If you map out his travels, I guess you have to make sure they don't go by Salt Lake. Otherwise, he would have been aware that not all water is automatically fresh. Um, but it's just a great. It's once again Burroughs is showing his skill at watching of in writing action sequences. This whole chapter, the whole escape and the pursuit is just more fun. They're just a lot of fun. And I do like the touch of Red Hawk not knowing that salt water wasn't good for him, that he hadn't experienced that before, and obviously never went to a school where he could have been taught that. Um, the only other time I can think of in fiction, this is pretty obscure, but in the novel The Dirty Dozen, they didn't put this into the movie. There was a character, he was played by Walker in the movie, Samuel Samson Posey, an Indian, who, when the Dirty Dozen were training and they were running on the beach next to the English Channel, Posey ran over to drink some water because he just wanted to drink water out of a big ocean. He was a Plains Indian and didn't have any, and had to spit it out because it was salt, and had no idea before that. So um, that that's like a book that's not at all like Red Hawk, but it just the similar incident made me think of it. So, comments from you guys about this chapter?
This is where the 9 foot tall Calcar Raven makes an appearance, or we hear of
I
him
don't think so.
eventually.
I think we hear of him in the next chapter when he meets the Japanese people.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Mhm. If unless Ortis mentions him at this point,
Yeah.
which didn't get into my notes, it's not impossible.
Well, but
So,
if it didn't get in your notes, it's probably a very small mention, so don't worry about it. We'll get there
okay,
eventually.
okay. Any other comments from either of you?
Hero. Hero was the Phantom's horse,
Hero. Yes, thank
and
you.
Devil was a trained wolf.
Yeah. Okay, he wasn't a dog. That's right, and I knew
Yeah.
that too. Phantom's a pretty cool character. So,
Now, here I'm thinking this is part of the mapping thing. I'm
mm,
thinking if they were at Big Bear Lake, then they came down probably in San Fernando Valley. So they probably went over the foothills, the mountains there, and end up somewhere. Because when I used to live out in North Hollywood and stuff, ended up drinking water in the Malibu area.
okay, so the capital city that the Calculus was using probably was LA then.
Probably in the San Fernando Valley, because I think the shortest route when they're in Malibu then would
Mm,
be coming up Sunset Drive
okay. So,
back towards the mountains and across the LA Basin
um, oh, it would have been fun if Burroughs had put in like Red Hawk seeing the remnants of the Hollywood sign or something like that.
or the La Brea Tar Pits.
Yeah, so or or wondering what did they have a Walk of Fame back then? The Walk of Stars. Um,
There might be
if,
remnants.
yeah, so mm.
Little touches like that when you're in watching science fiction films like this, it just I love to point out, oh, I know what that thing is, and I know what that thing is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me also think of Logan's Run, where Logan had no idea where he was, but we're looking at the Lincoln statue from the Lincoln Memorial, so we know where he is.
Yeah.
So
I'm still trying to figure out how they transport the Statue of Liberty from Earth to the Planet of the Apes.
I saw that the other day.
Oh,
That's a good one.
that would be yes, that would be that would be missing the point entirely. Especially well with Charleston Heston's character was screaming out to make the point. So
Yes, just in case you couldn't figure it out.
mhm. Well, don't we know from Spaceballs that it was absolutely remnant of the giant Maid robot that was sucking the air out of that one planet? So
I like that
uh,
one meme based on a Robert McGinnis painting of the lady sitting on the desk of a writer or executive and going, "Well, come on, the astronauts, why? What didn't they ever look up at the moon and the stars?"
Actually, isn't there a line of dialogue where they say there is no moon, implying that something catastrophic had happened to the moon at some point?
Oh my. Maybe in the
That could
book.
that could be
Uh,
a reason why there's extra destruction to the cities on the ocean side too.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's a good
can't
point.
remember. I may be imagining that. It was like when he's still with Dodge and Landon going through the desert, and they're just trying to figure out the planet. What is this place? There's lightning and never any rain. There's no, and I think he says there's no moon. But
Maybe I just the
yeah,
meme is so funny. I never thought about
I
that.
know. Now the one thing you just have to accept is that everybody speaks English, and he never know, he never like makes a connection there.
Well, we know the
And
apes have dirt, filthy hands.
yeah, so so um yeah, it's just
But I digress.
oh well we all digress. But now I'm gonna have to look up or replay that part of the movie. What did they say there was actually did they literally say there was no moon? And a nuclear war wouldn't have destroyed the moon, but maybe something else happened later on.
Some
Yeah,
collision,
Yeah,
interstellar collision of some kind could have
yeah,
destroyed the moon. And you're
yeah,
right, then that could spray all kinds of debris on Earth.
yeah, and then it would give extra reason for why um the astronauts didn't immediately recognize
Yeah.
Earth. Also, the constellations would have changed. There was enough time even for stellar movement to make a
yeah,
difference.
Uh-huh.
So
that's
looking at
Uh-huh.
the
true.
stars, they wouldn't have looked up and said, "Oh, Big Dipper, this is Earth," because there was enough time that went by where I think there would have been movement where the constellations would have been different. So the ape speaking English is really the only thing you have to ignore to enjoy the movie.
Well, if Charlton Heston and the astronauts there had some kind of a universal translator, but that's not they don't tell us that.
No,
Caesar was raised in a circus, though,
and he was
so he
right.
could have learned the English language that way.
Well, yeah, but this was before Caesar was
Yeah,
born.
yeah, it was before Caesar. This is when
Or
Charlton
after
Heston
Caesar
first
was born,
appeared.
if you take time travel into effect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that
Luke,
gets yeah. No,
they learned to speak
Taylor
English because
was
he was born after the ship
yeah,
came back to modern times.
yeah, but Taylor was writing in English in the notebook on paper for Cornelius and Zero before his throat healed.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he did. And
so
he
so
wrote in English.
yeah
Oh, that's a good
yeah.
point.
Yeah. So they were ignoring the language. It's like Star Trek. For story purposes, they just ignored language difficulties and went
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
And often that's the right decision. I don't think it spoils Planet of the Apes for anyone who enjoys that movie.
Oh,
1,800 years later, I'm suddenly finding this out, so it hasn't bothered me none.
So yeah. But I am gonna have to look up to see if I'm remembering the no moon line correctly. Okay, back to the book we're actually supposed to be talking about. We're up to chapter 6, which is called Saku the Nippon. And Red Hawk's looking for a way to find his people again. And he comes upon a race of Japanese pygmies. Um, and we get kind of a detailed description of their camp. And it is kind of neat. This is like an Asian culture. Over the years, they've become smaller, till they're pygmy size, but it's pretty clearly a Japanese culture. And I think it's neat that once again, a book written in 1925, where racial stereotypes were common in this fiction, he's showing an Asian culture and showing it with respect and appreciation, um, which I think is kind of neat. He's fed, he's given directions. Raban is definitely mentioned in here as somebody who terrorizes them and occasionally eats people. Um, Although Red Hawk initially thinks they're referring to some sort of natural event and just personifying it. Um, and he leaves. He comes upon a cow car chasing a girl. Um, the cow car dies in the fight, and the girl doesn't run away. And the chapter ends when she's standing there looking up at Julian. So we're about to meet the love interest. And that is chapter 6. Um, and comments from you guys?
Uh, I'll pass on this one. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay.
I agree. I like the way when you're looking at the times and stuff, even though, like we said, he gone off against Germany as enemy because of the war and stuff. But
Hmm.
we, as you mentioned, with indigenous people, Apache, Devil War Chief and stuff, and here he he doesn't base a character has to be bad because of who they are, the race they
Hmm.
represent in the stories.
Yeah.
He does that time and again, just like we've talked many times, where he makes the women strong and bold and thoughtful.
Hmm.
He does go beyond what a lot of the parameters were in stereotyping back then.
Yeah. He does. And he does do some racial stereotyping in some of his books, and that's fair to point out. But I always remember the scene from Return of Tarzan where he's about to kill the Waziri warrior, just get his stuff, his weapons and all that, and he sees him confront the lion and do it bravely, and he has this epiphany. No, wait a minute, I can't think somebody's a bad guy just because he's black, which he thought because of the cannibal tribe that killed his ape mom. So it was like I have to judge people as individuals, and Burroughs always did that in his fiction. Um, so and he never said, oh, Asian, he did with the war, he kind of did it with the Germans. So for propaganda purposes. And so
You
that's
know, Tarzan
yeah.
in that so-called character arc like that too.
Mm.
First meeting other people and
Yeah.
European and white people. But there are times I'm sure I'm remembering correctly in stories where once he realized he's a person, like a
Hmm.
human, but where he says about somebody, well, this person is worse than his stuff because he has intelligence and he should know better than to be this evil.
Hmm.
So he realizes it goes across all species or all types of good or bad. And
Yeah.
some is just a natural animalistic instinct, and others intelligence that they're
Hmm.
using in a corrupt way.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm sorry to digress again, but I had to look it up real quick. Original 1968 Planet of the Apes film, the astronauts do discuss the lack of a moon. They say there's a strange luminosity at night, but no actual moon in the sky.
Hmm.
So something happened to the moon, if not during the nuclear war, then afterwards. So that's just another reason the planet was such a mess. Um,
Maybe it's a giant black curtain
Maybe.
between.
So,
No,
um, okay, so any other comments on chapter 6? This is where we foreshadow Raban. If he was mentioned earlier, this is where we really
yeah.
really find out. even though Red Hawk wonders if he's a real person at this point. And I guess we should also mention that Red Hawk does immediately jump in to rescue the girl, even though he doesn't realize she's a Calcar yet. He's still got that basic chivalry that all Burroughs heroes always have to protecting women when necessary. So, so are we done? Is that chapter 6, or do we move on, or any more comments?
Nothing for
Move
me.
on.
Okay, chapter 7. Um, the girl's name is Bethelda, which I think is the best way to say it. I think it's fairly straightforward. Um, and she was trying to get to the Nippons because she wanted to be hidden from the Calcars. Um, and so chivalry demands that Julian, the Red Hawk, take her back. She wants to join the Julians, because she says she's American, others, but he knows that she's been with the Calcars, that they're the Calcar Americans. And he can't bring himself to kill her. He's got to protect her at the moment. But she makes arguments about the place of Americans that are trapped in the Calcar country, and this just makes Red Hawk rethink his attitudes again. Maybe these people can be our friends. Maybe they are fellow Americans. Maybe sometimes they had no choice in the decisions they made. And they pause during the night. He gives Bethelda his cloak when it gets cold. They fall in love pretty quickly, but that happens in Burroughs novels sometimes. And he finds out that she's actually an Ortiz. She's part of the ruling line. And he just doesn't know what to think about this. He's pretty confused. And he goes hunting for deer so they can bring food to the Nippons when he rejoins them. But upon returning, he finds there's dead bodies and the camp is in shambles and the place has been raided. And Bethelda's gone. And he finds the tracks for 20 horsemen, including a horse that's twice as large as a normal horse. And he starts to give pursuit. So that is chapter 7. There's a lot of character development in this one. Um, and also, I thought it was kind of really sad. He made the Nippons a likable people very quickly. So them getting wiped out, I thought was a truly tragic moment. So, comments from you guys?
Nothing for me. I'm dealing with the situation in my group. Please
Oh,
continue.
okay. Okay. Anything
Yeah,
from you, Scott?
I was surprised that they'd been slaughtered like that.
Hmm.
But that's just going to re-emphasize how bad Rabin,
Hmm.
how evil conquering they are. So, but yeah, that would be a horrific scene in a film.
Hmm. So, yeah, and then he's immediately, even though he's terribly outnumbered, he's immediately pursuing to rescue the girl. So, his attitude towards the Ortises is pretty much close to flipping completely around. Um, in chapter 8, which is called Raban, he gives chase. He uses kind of a hit and run tactic,
We moved
shooting at
Ronald
them.
Bruce yesterday.
Mhm. He takes a shortcut, so he's up above, he's on like ground up above them and starts picking them off with arrows. Um, Raban himself, who is like 9 feet tall, rides off with Bethelda and his remaining men. Red Hawk takes out several more, but there's still a couple left, and he's knocked unconscious and captured. Um, Now, one of his captors is a Yank named O'Connor, um, who gives him a little more background information about Raban. And Red Hawk, by now, he's more willing to trust the Yanks who have been working with the Calcars. He realizes they would love to get free from them, and so he convinces this guy to help him rescue Bethelda. O'Connor rides off to get help from the other Yanks in the area who are ready to rise up against the Calcars. And Red Hawk is free now because O'Connor set him free. He spies on Raban and his men, and he hears Raban um, being told of his capture and says, I want to eat this guy's heart. But then they discover that Red Hawk has escaped with the help of O'Connor, and that's the end of that chapter. Um,
Okay.
so I enjoyed um, Red Hawk's tactics, which were very logical and believable to whittle down the number of Raban's men. Um, and also, by this point, he's pretty much completely overcome his prejudice. That part of his character arc is finished. He still has to rescue his girl and defeat the Calcars, but at this point, he's gone around. He's gone from no, the only good one is a dead one to no, some of these guys should be on our side, and we need to work together. So, comments from you guys?
Nothing for me.
Mhm.
I I agree with the attack coming from behind and using the arrows and doing something like that.
Mhm.
It instead of just blundering into them or getting a couple other people and marching right in. It's a good strategic move.
Mhm. Yeah, Burroughs always does present his action in a believable way. I think whenever we read any of his characters using tactics of any sort, either in personal combat or in battle, those tactics make sense. It's part of the one of the strengths of his writing and doing great action scenes. Um, and so, chapter 9 is, Red Hawk wants to wait for O'Connor to bring out back help, but um, he just um, and he's re-equipped himself with weapons, but he needs to rescue the girl, and he gets into where Raban is, dragging Bethelda into a bedroom, and there's a epic fight that follows. Red Hawk wounds Raban a number of times. Um, Bethelda helps. She's not just damsel in distress. She helps even if it's just keeping a torch at Red Hawk's back so that Red Hawk can see what's going on better than Raban. They hear men coming, and they think that it's probably Raban's men coming. So they extinguish the torch, and the room is in darkness. Um, he fights, he fights newcomers in the dark. When a light is brought in, he sees that the newcomer is his brother Vulture. Raban's died from his wounds. The true Ortus, the guy he escaped with a few chapters before, has become the new leader of the Yanks in this area. The Calcars are defeated. Um, the good guys have won. The Red Hawks people came with O'Connor's men to do this last minute rescue, and the true Ortis swears an allegiance to Red Hawk. So the two sides are finally together. Um, and I have to say, this was another epic fight scene. This matches the big massive battle from chapter 3. It was especially when the lights went out and he was fighting in the dark.
Yeah,
It was just pretty cool. And once again, we see that his character arc is pretty complete and that he's now willing to make peace and bring the Kalkar Yanks into his tribe and have them all live together. So, comments from you guys?
I'll go ahead. I know we still got another chapter to go, but I was surprised how quickly
Mhm.
Burroughs wrapped this book up, or is wrapping the book up. So much happens in this thing. There's the soon to be victory at this time, and it's going to extend into the next chapter, of course, and then everyone coming together like that. I'd have to go back and check the page count, but I think this is one of his shorter books overall.
It
That's
is.
not a bad
Yeah.
commentary writing
That's
and stuff. I
yeah.
just was surprised when I guess he felt he told the story he wanted to, and I thought it wrapped up pretty quick.
Yeah. I always thought it was interesting that Red Hawk, and this is not a criticism, it's just a comment on it. Red Hawk was always so anti making peace with the Ortis. And then O'Connor on his own finds Red Hawk's people and says, let's team up. And they all say, that sounds cool, let's do this. So I just wonder if when Red Hawk was in charge, is if his attitude of never making peace wasn't shared by his brothers and the other leaders. They were saying, maybe we ought to, it didn't go into it in the book, but maybe they were always thinking, I wish he'd back off from that attitude a little. We might get more done. Um, so, um, but the whole book's told from Red Hawk's point of view. So if that was
Yeah,
going on off in another area, we wouldn't have seen it. Um, But it does, yeah, I mean, this book's often published along with Moon Men, and sometimes the whole trilogy is published together because none of
Yeah,
them are long books, and this is definitely the shortest one.
yeah,
So I think it's only rarely gotten published on its own. So
yeah. My copy is the three of them together
mhm.
trilogy.
Yeah, I have a electronic copy that's all three together. So um, up and you have there's we can't you those of you listening to the podcast won't see this. Russ is or Jess is holding up the expanded Moon Maid, which I assume is all three together, right?
It's all
And
three
I
together.
think
Yes, it is.
and I think with the is that the Frazetta painting on the front?
No, that's
Cal what's his name? Ron
no,
I know who it is.
J. Allen St. John.
Okay, that's J. Allen St. John. Okay. So
And this book, of course, if someone wanted the most thorough edition, this is the one I would point them to. Now, I
mhm.
should caveat that by saying it is possible that the edition that Jim Gerlach produced over at ERB Books might be more thorough than that one. I'm not going to sit down and compare the two.
Okay. But it is neat that all of Burroughs stuff is so easily available, though, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it's wonderful.
And you can find just about everything online if you don't want to have to, at least most of his early stuff, because it's public domain now. So it's always possible to find and read his stuff. Um, Chapter 10 was peace. The remainder of the Calcars flee. They sail away to the west. So there's a question about whether they'll fall off the edge of the world or whether they'll sail around the world and come back to North America. Because even Red Hawk's brother Raincloud doesn't realize there's another continent in the way. Um, but Red Hawk declares his love to Bethelda, and um, their son is born soon after, and the reunion of the two peoples, the Julians and the Ortises, are complete. The great feud is over, and there's a chance, if you interpret Raincloud's remarks about is the world flat, has there's a chance that they're on the edge of a renaissance. This is when it could take place because they don't have to fight for survival every day. Now they have some peace. So
Start
uh,
rebuilding society.
yeah, they could. And you can see Raincloud with the idea of can I start a school and go through some of the whatever surviving books there are and try and figure out how to read them. So you might find a copy of the same A is for ape, B is for boy book that Tarzan used when he was growing up and start from there. So, because there must be a few things left in the ancient libraries. So,
This
who
book
knows?
caught me a little off guard because it's not bookended like the other two stories are, with the
Mhm.
narrator being one
Yeah,
of the Julians and telling the story to a third party or a second party or
that's
whatever.
true. So you have to wonder, since Red Hawk was not literate, who wrote all this down? And how did it get to us? So, um,
The unknown narrator.
yeah, the unknown narrator. So, okay. Any final thoughts on the book or the series as a whole?
Well, I really enjoyed this. I'm glad we got to take a look at it.
Me
It's a
too.
fine
Yeah,
story.
I had not read them all in years, so it was a good excuse to go back to them. And um, I had enormous fun reading them again. Um,
It has a very, very straight narrative too, compared to a lot of books we've talked about that Burroughs writes, where there's other subplots and related connections of characters. This one's pretty much Red Hawk straight
mm,
on through and
hmm
through.
yeah. Um, and it is. I would say more action oriented than the other two, although the other two have just
Yeah.
excellent action scenes in them. This one is almost all action from beginning to end. He still gets in Red Hawk's character arc and does it really well, but it's done all through battles and escapes and rescues and all sorts of cool stuff. So, um, yeah. So, well, the next thing we have to do is give out the Bertha Kircher Best Action Scene Award, which we've been doing since we did Tarzan the Untamed. Bertha was a main character in that and took place in several of the awesome action scenes from that book. Um, and so my nominees for the absolute best action scenes are the bookends of the book, are the kind of bookends. There's the epic battle near the beginning in chapter 3 where they attack the camp and attack from several directions, and there's this all-day battle, exhausting battle that goes on, or from chapter 9, the fight scene between Rabban and Red Hawk, with Bethalda holding up a torch at first, and then later on the fight going on in the pitch dark. Um, both are superb. And I would have a hard time picking between the two, although I will. But of those two, which ones would you pick to give the Bertha Kircher Award?
I will. Originally, my heart was with the first skirmish coming over the mountains and around Bear Lake and stuff,
Mm,
because there's a good, strong battle scene here.
mhm,
But as we've been talking, looking through it, and this one here, how it wraps up, the evil guy is taken out.
mhm.
It displaces the skirmish we didn't see when the Nippons were killed, because
Yeah.
that's off screen. So I think I'd have to go with this. You think you're going to be fighting the enemy in the dark, it turns out to be your own people.
Yeah.
There's some good twists and turns on that too. So
That's a
I'd
good.
go with the reunion battle.
Okay. Jess, which of those two would you pick as the best
I'm
action
fine with
scene?
y'all's choice.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I would agree with you, Scott. I think you sold me on that. I was leaning towards picking the opening battle because it is epic and how much it reminds me of Robert E. Howard style, and I love his writing. But you make a good point about the coolness of it and the irony of it, fighting your own guy in the dark. So we will give the Bircher Kircher Best Action Scene Award to Chapter 9, the fight between Robin and Red Hawk. Um, so Red Hawk can expect his award in the mail as soon as the 25th century reestablishes mail service. So,
Good luck.
so well, I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but since it was Robert E. Howard's birthday, 120th birthday, just a few days ago, does anyone want to recommend a favorite Robert E. Howard story for people to look up and read?
All of them.
Uh,
Um, um, oh, come on, I'm having a
I know, I
brain
put you on the
lapse here.
spot, and there's so many of them.
Tower of the
Tower of the Elephant?
yeah,
Yeah, one of the
that would be
Conan,
way up there. That'd be way up
yeah,
there.
one of the best Conan stories. Um, I would actually recommend The Shadow of the Vulture, which is the story that introduced Red Sonja, but in Howard's story, she's a 16th century Cossack woman warrior, and she's not a sword and sorcery person. That was done by Marvel Comics later on. So, and I always liked that version of her and wish that it had gotten more attention and sequels and all. So that's Shadow of the Vulture,
There's
which can be
another one. You mentioned Vulture. Pigeons from
Pigeons from
Hell.
Hell, one of his horror stories, one of the creepiest horror stories
Yeah,
ever.
that's pretty awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, I love Robert E. Howard.
Hmm.
Some people listening might call this blasphemous, but I put him and ERB kind of side by side. I love Robert E. Howard's descriptive style and
Hmm.
narration.
Yeah. I agree. He's one of my favorite writers as well. Yeah. Jess, I didn't mean to put you on a spot with this question. Are you a Robert E. Howard fan?
Um, well, to be honest about it, no, I'm not. I've not read
Okay.
his stuff, to tell you the truth. So I will pass.
Okay.
I will accept whatever y'all suggest.
Okay. Well, so we've come up with Tower of the Elephant, Pigeons from Hell, and The Shadow of the Vulture. All highly recommended.
And
So
Solomon Kane and Cole, the Black
Anything
Mountain
with Solomon
War.
Kane, I know. He created some great characters.
Yeah,
Um, okay, and next time we have not scheduled our next podcast yet, so I don't know when it will be, but we were talking about doing one of his westerns written the same year as this one, The Bandit of Hell's Bend. Um, and I don't think we've talked about I think the only western we ever did was some years ago when we did War Chief. I don't know if you guys remember, we
didn't
recorded
we do
it and
Apache Devil too?
I don't think we did. So maybe we can go back and do that at some point.
But the Return of the Mucker was kind of,
That
or the
was kind
Mucker
of a
was kind of
Western
a
too,
Western.
yeah, because he moved that from a lost tropical civilization of samurais to the Mexican, revolution and bandits and all.
Yeah,
So he did make that a Western. So, but I think Bandits of Hell Bend, if I recall, is set in the traditional Old West and is pretty
yeah.
much a straightforward Western.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, that is, yeah, that is it for this time. Scott, you want to plug anything on the way out? Or just say bye?
Uh, you know, well, I've got to renew, but I'm always a fan of the Herb Inc. page, the comic strips.
Hmm.
If people aren't familiar with them, they should become familiar with them. Lots
Yeah.
of excellent writers and artists on those.
Oh, yeah. And I appreciate your mentioning them. I have not read whatever they released this weekend yet. I forgot all about that. So, so yeah. And Jess, you want to plug your page on the way out?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've been a longtime fan of the ERB comic books over at their website, so I would
Mm,
echo that. I think those are very great entertainment and afford downright cheap entertainment in today's
hmm.
world. So I've been a big fan of those for years. So I certainly encourage that. My discussion group for the love of all things Edgar Rice Bros. Come join us on Facebook where we talk ERB pertinent 24/7. For the love of
Yeah.
all things Edgar Rice Bros.
Okay, and my name is Tim DeForest. I will, in the show notes, I'll link to my blog, Comics, Old Time Radio, and Other Cool Stuff. And from there, you can link to my Amazon author page and to my BookTube channel and to the other blog I now have called Books Worth Reading, where I review every book I read. Um, and uh, I just I'm so nerdy. I love talking about my books. So I have very, I'm not the, I don't get a lot of hits on my BookTube videos, but I love them so much. And I know I have a few people who watch and comment on them. So
And you
as
made your
long as,
list of the books that you read last year too.
yeah, I compiled a list of everything I read in 2025 with a short review of each one.
You should be
So
proud of yourself and keep on turning out fine books.
yeah, and I just love so doing a BookTube channel, even though I know I'll never have a big audience, is just a way of being nerdy and talking about my books, but the books I read. So who wouldn't want to do that? I don't know who wouldn't want to do that. So anyway, thank you everybody for listening. Scott and Jess, it's always fun talking about these books with you and the
Thank
insights you bring to them. And we will be doing an episode on the Bandit of Hell's Bend soon when we'll make announcements when we know. So thank you everybody for listening.